This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Thank you. We're meeting Zoom, Finance Committee meeting this evening. We'll start with the approval of the minutes for March 9th, 2022. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the March 9th meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councillor Peak?
Aye.
Councillor Denham?
Aye.
Councillor Riss says aye. Mayor LaChapelle, do you have anything other than what's on the agenda?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Public speak. If you're here to speak before the council, the City Council Finance Committee, you may do so now. Raise your hand. Go ahead, Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Tiffany from 190 Park Street. And I was just interested when you get to the section of a supplemental appropriation for the CPA for the 17 Ward Avenue property. Do I expand on that now or do I wait till you get to that?
You can go ahead and make a statement. You have 3 minutes if you'd like.
I'm just following this because the multi-use path that's going up Park Street, and this is the connector to that, I believe. Just interested if this purchase is regardless of the construction of the multi-use path. Are they connected? Are they two separate entities?
I'll answer your question. They are separate and they are connected, but they are separate. That's all I want to say about this evening because it's still ongoing discussion and a negotiation. Okay, Beth? I hope that helps. If you want me to answer further questions on it, you can email me and I'll be happy to.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to move on to the agenda. I'm going to start with the Ward Avenue acquisition. There's been a request from City Planner Bagg to discuss that. I'm going to hand it over to you, City Planner Bagg.
Thanks. Yeah, so this is an item that got introduced via the CPA committee. I was just looking at my timeline. It was originally submitted in January to the CPA, and then they had an initial meeting and a second meeting in February. And I do want to address what Beth had said is during the CPA discussions, the CPA committee did say that this parcel and the idea of the connection is really important regardless of the Park Street Safe Routes to School grant. And kind of the idea of acquiring this parcel is really a strategic key place for us to connect from the bike path to Park Street with or without that larger grant. And so that's kind of what is keeping this moving forward. We're kind of running a little bit parallel with the Safe Routes to School program, but the CPA committee voted unanimously to pursue this with or without that larger grant. And so it kind of brings us to this point in time where we are now. What I was hoping to have the discussion with Finance Committee is understand if there's any questions or concerns. But as we bring this into City Council, my understanding is that the public hearing may have already been set for April 6th. I think we might need a little bit more time to just sort out some details before City Council takes a vote. We're dealing with a private property owner, and I want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of anything that they have as far as questions or needs before we move forward. And so part of my goal is to advance this far enough so that if we're talking to the private landowner, that we know that we have the city's support, both community support and financial support to talk about acquiring the land. There are some potential variations of this, which these are the types of details that I would want more time to work out, but there could be another option besides just purchasing the property. We might be able to talk about a permanent easement that would go over the property for this purpose. And so that could be an option that would be instead of buying it. There could be other opportunities out there for, the Williston has approached both the private property owner and the city about a possible partnership to work together on creating this connection. So there's a little bit more time needed to kind of flesh that out. And then, as part of, I don't know, I'm almost done, but as part of the Safe Routes to School program, it's kind of similar is that program does not pay for acquiring any land that might be necessary for the path. And because this one was so critical to that potential project, we did want to advance this one a little bit further along and make sure that we had the ability through CPA to fund the acquisition. And so a lot of this is just trying to advance far enough to have a realistic conversation with the property owner. And we can't really do that if we don't really know if we have the money available to even enter into something like an option to purchase agreement and things like that. So I guess I would ask Council Chair Rist if that is correct, that the public hearing did get set for April 6th.
It is set, but we can continue it. Are you asking the Finance Committee to hold off debating this evening?
Well, I think the Finance Committee would need to debate it a little bit in order to advance it to that public hearing.
So you do want us to debate it and approve it this evening, if we wanted to?
Yeah, it's been unclear. I mean, I think it could go either way. I think it would be useful to potentially debate it and bring it to City Council, just knowing that we may need to continue that hearing on April 6th.
Okay, I misunderstood you. Do you have maps of this project so that we can show them to the members of the council?
Yes.
Because if that's the case, we could approve it this evening. And if you request that we continue the public hearing, we will do so on April 6th. That's 2 weeks away, by the way, because of an extra week in March. Mm-hmm. So if I'm hearing you right, we will advance this evening, should the councilors want to. But I'd like them to see an aerial view of the property. Maybe you can point out, I'll make you a co-host, Jeff. And also you could show the Safe Routes to School map and how they all intertwine, even though this is only about that property.
Yeah. I just want to point out, sorry, we lost Tom. So I just want you to know
that. We lost Tom?
Yeah, so I just want you to know that.
I just noticed that. Well, I hope he comes back. Go ahead and start bringing up your maps, but
yeah, I will do that once again. And so one thing,
because Omar's here, if Connie and I should dare disagree with each other, Omar gets to break the tie. So.
Yeah, one thing I'll add.
We'll be back. Go ahead, Jeff.
One thing I'll add before I show the map is just that in discussing this with the CPA, I mean, I do want to just reiterate that this has been reviewed by the Manhattan Rail Trail Committee as well, the idea of this, and this goes back quite a ways. In 2008, the master plan had identified the need to replace the elementary schools and had identified preliminarily that Whitebrook could be a potential location for the elementary schools way back then. And so starting with the 2008 master plan, the goals are general, but they said, the goal is to connect the rail trail to the school, the rail trail to neighborhoods, and the rail trail to things like Nantucket Park. And so in 2017, the Rail Trail Committee kind of doubled down and wrote a letter to identify their priorities. And it continues to be to connect the rail trail to neighborhoods or schools. And so that's kind of why when CPA got it, the value of this property is really critical because it will provide us with the connection from the rail trail to Park Street, no matter what. Regardless of a wider path or not on Park Street, people are going to use it. It's a beaten down path. It is too steep and people can't use it today. So I see Tom entering the room. Dan, do you still see the admin?
Yeah, I got it. I'll get him.
Okay. So I'll share my screen. Yep. So the image here is from the Safe Routes to School feasibility study. We did the Park Street feasibility study, but a key component of that was making this connection on Ward Ave from the rail trail up to Park Street.
Do you have
And
a
that is-
close-up of that?
Yep. So that is what we're kind of talking about today.
Mhm.
I'll get there in a second. So if you're familiar with the rail trail, this is the view. The bridge in the background is Park Street. And we're talking about this parcel on the left-hand side here. And if you're familiar with that, up by the bridge abutment is the beaten down path that just kind of shoots straight up. It's often muddy, it's dangerous. You can't get a kid with a bike or anything down that. So this parcel is the one that provides us with that connection to Park Street. The feasibility study kind of showed this as being the critical area, and the nature of this path generally envisioned is a 10-foot wide multi-use path that would maintain, grades for ADA so that it's gradual and would be accessible to people with mobility issues or able-bodied people to get up to Park Street. And so this is really what's being considered right now, just to understand that the city did fund an appraisal for the 1 acre parcel. And so that really formed the basis for the CPA discussion. So the approximate value of the land was appraised at 110,000. And then there's some information in there, some money in there for a survey, due diligence, and legal fees to bring this to a closing. And so the total request was 137,500. So
Okay,
now I'll stop and answer questions.
Well, what I want to say is, as CPA chair, the CPA committee is very excited about this purchase, not just because of the Safe Routes to School, because it gives another way for the neighborhoods to access it. From the point of view of the Safe Routes to School, it brings New City and that area of the city a method, a way of getting all the way to the schools without having to ride the streets, especially if the Safe Routes to School grant, which we got, is completed. And this particular access, I want to reemphasize, counselors, that we wanted this access regardless of the Safe Routes to School grant, which we didn't know we got until after this was approved. Right now, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, the only way to get to the bike path is either through Williston, later or further toward the city, or off of South Street. So this provides a new connection. And we were very excited, the CPA was, to see this happen. And now that there's a connection with the Safe Routes to School project, it's a fantastic method of getting kids on bikes or walking all the way to the school. So that's why we were excited about it. Counselors, questions? Connie?
Go ahead. Tom put his hand up first.
Oh, okay. I didn't see Tom. Tom, go ahead.
There. I'm sorry, I lost internet for a second, so I might have missed this.
No, we waited until you were there to get the map up, Tom.
Oh, that's nice of you. Thank you. Is the idea that we would vote on this, and assuming a favorable vote, that it would then go, but that we'd hold off, we'd continue the public hearing until, or are we just talking about this tonight? Like, is the idea that we want to vote tonight, or?
Well, I think we
just-
should vote because the full council has to vote. I'm prepared to vote, but I think continuing the public hearing, I would wait to see if the planning department is ready for that, because there's still ongoing discussions going on. So that's where I'm at tonight. I think having the money in place, at least at the finance level, I think if I'm hearing you right, Jeff, that gives the property owner a sense that the council's ready. I'm not sure. I think a vote doesn't hurt the project, and it won't delay it. Should you be ready for the public hearing on the 6th?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the questions because it's a good question. I mean, one of the things that we need to contend with is that the vote is really just the money to appropriate the money for this purpose, but it's not actually to acquire the land. So that's one of the things I'm trying to rectify, is that showing that the city is financially ready to acquire the land is where we're at. We haven't caught up with the actual then mechanism to vote to acquire the land, because I think from my experience so far, acquiring some of the open space parcels is a separate vote. So that's not queued up right now. And that's something that, I'm trying to figure out. And I've been consulting with the mayor and we've been talking to the city attorney, except, this is a good place for us to be at right now. And I think we need to be in contact with the property owner to make sure that we're staying in good communication with them, to make sure that, we might not be able to advance this right away, but I think what we want to try to do is secure the vote for the funds, because that really gives us the opportunity to go and talk to the owner and say that we are ready or serious and able to acquire the land. So one is the financial commitment, and then there will be, my understanding is there'll be a separate action by city council to authorize the mayor to execute that and buy the real land. So we kind of have two different steps. This is really step one for the financial component.
But I also think that you were saying that even though the financial component would still need to have a public hearing on the 6th, that you would want to wait on that public hearing if there's more information you can provide to council at that time. So even that might be delayed. If we pass this evening, then we're at the full council process, and then that may be delayed because you want to be able to give the council the full view of where you are at that time. Am I correct?
Yep. And I'll just add one more thing, which is on April 6th, we might want to introduce if things are going well and forward as we hope, maybe we would introduce a separate item to council to either enter into the option agreement or to ask for city council to authorize the mayor to purchase the property and then line them up. So that would be a little bit further in April or even May. This is great. As I said, this is a really good spot for us to be at. And I think just moving it, if the finance subcommittee is favorable to make the recommendation April 6th, then we would just probably continue that hearing for a little bit more time.
Does that answer your question, Tom?
I think so.
We are
So
going to
the
vote.
idea is that what you're requesting for us is to tonight take a vote on this proposal that would then go to the scheduled public hearing on April 6th, but you're giving us a heads up that at that hearing, there likely will still be some conversations that we have to have, and we will likely be continuing that public hearing to a later date.
Yeah,
we might be.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Connie.
Yeah, as someone who uses that muddy path, this is very exciting. So I'm happy.
Wait a minute, you go up the steep path?
I do, yes.
Oh God. Okay.
It's better going down, though, I will say that. So I just want to be clear. So that picture you showed, that entire green space where the path is going to be is owned by one person, or are there open space there too? I just want to make sure I understood. So all of that is owned by one property owner. Is that correct?
Yes. Phillips,
Okay.
right?
Yep. Sorry, I was looking for my mute button.
It's owned by Phillips Manufacturing, which is the building next door.
Oh, okay. Yep. So I just wanted to make sure.
That's true, right?
Correct.
Because you had mentioned something about a partnership with Williston, and so I just wanted to make sure that.
That's a different discussion, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to be clear that that was all one person. Okay, thank you.
Anybody, Mayor or Omar, do you have any questions or statements or discussions?
No, I do not.
Thank you, Omar. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, so I mean, just to kind of boil it down, on this request that's in front of CPA and the strategy or thought behind this is actually very similar to City Space. So we are not exactly what we're not sure what the final determination will be from the city's action. But we want to make sure we have approval to access the money if it indeed is a purchase. So it's something that, just like with City Space, we put money aside as they need it. And for a project that is coming forward, we don't necessarily know every detail of what happens when. And the same here with this piece of land. I mean, this is a way to stack tools to leverage the opportunity, depending on how it comes our way.
Okay. Any
Yeah,
other questions?
and no, that was great, Mayor. And I appreciate that a lot because it helps to clarify something in my mind is for you and I, like the normal person, you might be able to walk up to someone and say like, let's work on a land deal. But a municipality, we really can't do that. I really like the planning department or the city can't really go to a property owner and say, this is something we can do unless we bring it all the way to the city council process for that vote to make sure that we have the money available to then have that discussion. So a lot of that is trying to be as ready as possible then to have some further discussions and make sure that as the city, we can really say that we actually have the finances available to do this. And so that was something that the mayor said. It just made me want to say that, just that this is all in preparation to try to make sure that we are in the best position possible to try to advance this forward.
While still, providing and following the public process and vetting. We're trying to do the steps we can up until, we will, there's a path forward for us. So we've done, just planning and CPA, and even DPW over the last few years have made a really good habit of preparing everything they possibly can, and then leverage it to what is available, whether that's reserve, whether that's a grant, whether it's CPA. And this is another great example. We want to, we want to pick the cards in our hand and not have them be given to us.
Anything else, councilors? If not, I'll request a motion for the approval to send to the full council a Community Preservation Act supplemental appropriation of $137,500 for the purpose of the Ward Avenue Rail Trail land acquisition.
So moved.
Connie, you say second.
Second, sorry. I was
We have a
reading.
motion to approve 137 or to send to the full council 137,500 with a positive recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Connie?
Aye.
Counselor Peak?
Aye.
And Counselor Riss says aye. So that's done. I'm going to move ahead with all of the appropriations requested through the DPW. I'm going to say that we have a lot of them, but you provided Greg with great information in the packet. So counselors, I'm just going to ask, in order to move these fairly quickly, whoever's responsible for these to speak briefly to them. They all seem rather straightforward and necessary to me. But counselors, don't be afraid to absolutely ask questions if you need to. The first is the $3,000 for recycling. And yes, we want to get rid of all of the obsolete non-functioning computers. So I don't think that's a question. This is your request, Greg, or is it coming from the mayor's office? I don't know.
Building operations in conjunction.
Yeah,
with
that's you, right?
IT
Okay.
department.
So this is the cost of getting them recycled.
Yeah, it's
I know that when you go to Valley and you bring a TV, you have to pay for it.
yep. We've just had years of upgrades, especially over the last couple of years, and things have just been kind of piling up and needed to be dealt with.
Okay. Counselors, questions?
This is computers.
Computers,
Computers,
monitors.
monitors, radio equipment, batteries.
Okay. Then no, that makes sense.
Connie, okay. Then I'll please take a motion for an interdepartmental transfer of $3,000 from the reserve fund to the recycling account?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve, to send to the full council for approval of $3,000 reserve fund transfer for recycling. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Counselor Denham,
Aye.
Counselor Peak.
Aye.
Counselor Riss says aye. Next one is a $39,354 request for pedestrian safety improvements on Holyoke Street at the intersection of East Green and Allen Streets. And this is coming from Cannabis Stabilization. I certainly want to see these things improved. You want to say anything to this, Greg?
Yeah, so that intersection, we have a similar problem to the problem we had at Main and South Street, where there's really no defined sidewalk on, especially on the East Green side. So we need to get survey there to see exactly where the city right of way is, so that we can determine, the best improvements to make that what can be made for improvements to make that crossing safer.
So this is a survey and design. It's not for the actual new crossing.
Exactly. It's survey and design in an effort to get us lined up for a complete streets grant application. So hopefully we can go after some grant funding to get some of the work done. If not, we'll look at Chapter 90 and other funding we have available. But we need to see what those improvements can be first, and that's where design and survey comes in.
Okay, you have to have a design before you can apply for grants. Councilors, questions? Counselor Peak?
This isn't so much a question, but I live basically at that intersection. I live 2 houses up from that intersection. I am a person who likes to visit our beautiful Cottage Street Cultural District fairly often, and I am routinely nearly killed in that intersection. I would say that if something's going to kill me in the next few years, it'll probably be that intersection, because I cross it a lot, and it's, there's a lot that could be improved. So I'm super happy to see this this going forward with the design work. It's certainly a challenging issue, situation, because the crosswalk effectively just terminates in a parking lot for a private business. So what exactly gets done about that and what that looks like is something that I've wondered for a while. I'm definitely very excited to see what comes up. I also will say, as the Precinct 3 city councilor, this is a frequent topic of point of concern for constituents. There's really there's these 2 crosswalks that cross Holyoke Street, and on the other side of the street, and there's only a sidewalk on one side of the street. So there's a pretty considerable number of people living in both single and multifamily housing on the side of Holyoke Street that I live on, that these are their 2 points to cross that street. There's a lot of people who do use that sidewalk to get downtown, because it's a fairly walkable neighborhood. And there's a lot of high-speed vehicles blowing through there. So it's something that I hear about very frequently as a constituent concern. And I'm really, really excited to see that we're getting the ball rolling on this. I also just want to say that I think that cannabis is a great source to bring these funds for, because it's hard, if you are somebody visiting our city to visit the dispensaries, you're almost certainly using this corridor. And there certainly are a lot of Connecticut and New York license plates going at very high speeds down this street. So very excited about it, 100% in support. Not that I think that's probably actually in doubt, but I figure I need to say my piece.
I think we should change it to the keep Councilor Peak safe appropriation.
Yeah.
Kai, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think this is really important. I've often stopped to have people cross that intersection, and I'm not the first person in line who could have stopped, right? So I think a lot of people either aren't paying attention to the people who are standing there at the crosswalk, or they're just going so fast that they don't care. And I think this is particularly important on the UMass campus. In the last 3 weeks, one student was killed in a crosswalk, and just yesterday or 2 days ago, another student is now in critical condition because they were hit in a crosswalk. And so I think drivers are just taking a lot more liberty in terms of whether or not they want to stop at crosswalks, go the speed limit, etc. And so I think that this is really important. And for the people who live in there in that neighborhood, I think it's here's an opportunity for us to protect their and think about their safety.
Well, I can certainly agree with both counselors on this. This is valuable. We've had a tragedy as that with a crosswalk in our city already. So anything we can do to make it safer. Mayor or Omar, do you have anything you want to add?
I was just gonna add that we've actually had a fatality in that area some years back, a young lady. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that in respect to the family that is very much in support of this.
Okay, anything else? Then I'll take a motion to approve a supplemental appropriation to recommend to the full council a supplemental appropriation of $39,354 from cannabis stabilization to the professional service pedestrian safety account for the intersection of East Green and Allen Streets at Holyoke Street.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councillor Peak.
Aye.
Councillor Denham.
Aye.
Councillor Riss says aye. Next one is the electric vehicle charging and Valley bike share $10,000 accounts. We did this already once recently. Obviously, something very valuable. This is an excellent, this charging station is valuable for climate change and for anything to do with helping with sustainable. So Greg, was this you or the conservation agent? Is this you, Cassie?
So DPW, we handle these and we work close with the planning department on them. Our public works role is more processing of the bills and just kind of helping out if something goes wrong at the station. So as far as the policy decisions behind them, we really lean on the on Cassie and the planning department for those. So I would have to defer to Cassie.
And Cassie, you wrote a very nice 2-page statement on this. Helps to do it all. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't want to add anything, but I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have. I basically, like Greg said, I've been managing the stations in terms of setting the fees and making sure their maintenance is up and processing the revenue that's generated.
So they've been around at least one summer, right? Have they been used a lot?
They've been getting a good amount of use. It fluctuates up and down throughout the year, and we only have 18 months of data. So it's hard to really take good note of trends from that. But I do feel confident that this is the correct amount to request for both the Valley Bike Share to continue our, kind of membership with that program, and then also for the remainder of the fiscal year, just for the electrical costs associated with the EV chargers.
Okay, councilors, questions? Councilor Peak.
I have been through this before, but I just want to confirm that I understand this. The idea is that we are, like, if somebody uses the charger, are they using them for free or just at a reduced rate? And that's why, like, this money's to help cover the shortfall?
So it's not a reduced rate and it's not free either. I do have it set with a fee currently right now. What that is 25 cents per kilowatt hour while it's charging. Then once the vehicle's finished charging, 30 minutes after, it starts charging them $2.50 per hour just to simply occupy the spot. And the reasoning behind that is to encourage people to move once their car is done charging. That rate was chosen because it kind of matches up or is competitive with surrounding area chargers. We want people to be encouraged to use them, and that kind of matches that per kilowatt hour fee lines up more with how the how vehicles use it. We got a a letter from a resident when we first set them up saying that that was a fair setup. And when I did some research, I realized that that was the case. There isn't a way to make it so that the fee matches what the cost is for us. And the reason behind that is because Eversource, with the rate plan that they have for us for these chargers, adds what's called a demand charge. Once the chargers request or use over 2 kilowatts per hour, they triggers this demand charge, which can be about $10 per kilowatt hour. And that fluctuates in a way that it's not set up through the program that I set the fee at, that can be a 1-to-1, which I know seems a little confusing, but it basically ends up being that the energy cost is much higher than it would be reasonable to charge people to use them. And there isn't a way to set it up to be 1-to-1. So we'd have to set them really high. And that isn't what's happening with any of the chargers that exist in the surrounding area. So people probably just wouldn't use them. They would go use another one. And we've researched other options about it, such as, throttling the machines so that they don't ever reach the threshold of triggering the demand charge. But they would work so slowly that people would probably think they were broken. They would charge vehicles so slowly. And then the last option would be to look into a different rate plan through Eversource, and they don't have a good one yet that matches up with the use that these EV chargers receive. Though it's not something that is unique to Easthampton. There's a lot of communities that are running up to this cost problem. So hopefully in the future, with increased use of electric vehicles and support maybe from the federal government or even the state, something will change. So that's something we're actively still looking into, trying to keep up with if there is an alternative that arises, jumping on that opportunity.
Yes, and I recall that we discussed how they might be free in the future, but we need a lot more data to see what that cost would be to the city. I know there are some stations maybe in town, but in other towns that are free. Certainly something I'd be in favor of, but we'd have to have some good data to see what that cost is, and especially when we don't have a good idea of what Eversource rates are. It sounds like it's way too complicated. Councilor Denham, do you have any questions? No? Mr. Bagg, Planner Bagg or Councilor Bagg, whoever you are.
Planner Bagg, thank you. No, I just wanted to add on to what Kathy was saying just real quick. So, because this came up last time, just to be clear that the Valley bikes do not generate revenue. What had happened over the evolution of that program is there is an additional administration fee that all the communities are being charged. But what I wanted to say about that was that both of these are really representative of Easthampton trying to, like you said, Councilor Riss, be at the table for climate change and being resilient. And it's not free for us. So we are investing in this program. These two programs, we are investing, we are subsidizing it so that Easthampton is at the table doing these things. And, I just wanted to echo what Cassie was saying. And, the city council passed a resolution to do things like this. And this is a really good example for council to be able to say we are doing something. The Valley Bike Share, the idea is that people can get on these, and as we build a station or two more, people can take short trips on the bikes rather than getting on their car. And that is like a thing to reduce the use of fossil fuels. And then supporting the electric vehicle chargers, we are ahead of the curve. I really appreciate all Cassie's work, because I think what we as a community probably need to do in the coming years is push on Eversource to fix that demand charge, because that's really throwing it all out of whack. Cassie was being very modest and saying, like, there's other communities that are complaining about this, that demand price it's unpredictable. And so if we can really pull that down with Eversource, then we'll get a little bit closer to being like revenue and then fees. But these are two programs that council should be proud of that we're doing. And it is really a way to show that Easthampton's doing stuff to be green. And I really appreciate Cassie's work. I appreciate Craig being a real partner in this. It's hard, but it's good for us to be kind of doing this now. We're all hearing about these big federal dollars coming, so there could be more chargers, there could be more bikes, but we have kind of the framework in place. So I'll end at that.
Thank you for your succinct statement. Anything else from any counselors? Okay, I'll take a motion to recommend to the full council a supplemental appropriation of $10,000 from free cash for revenue electric bike revolving account and for revenue EV charging and bike department revolving account.
So
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for that appropriation. Any further discussion? Counselor Denham,
Aye.
Counselor Peak.
Aye.
Counselor Riss says aye. Next one is $25,000 for enterprise return earnings. This is a NPDES permit compliance. Seems like we need to do this for the wastewater treatment plant. We don't comply with permits, they shut down the wastewater treatment plant? I don't know. Greg?
We'd probably be looking at a fine, but what we're doing here is looking for some assistance from Woodard and from a consulting firm on complying with changes to our NIPD's permit. They're starting to look at PFAS in wastewater discharge to the Connecticut River and nitrogen levels and the protection of Long Island Sound, the effects of our discharge on potential other uses, whether it be bathing in the river or drinking water sources below our discharge. I don't know of any communities south of us that are pulling from the Connecticut River for their drinking water, but that's kind of the objective of regulation changes.
So this is to make us compliant with possible regulatory changes coming up.
Yeah, and another piece of that is there is some Mass DEP regulatory change that's going to require us to do a public notification in the event of a sanitary sewer overflow, whether it be to a body of water or on a street, or we do everything we can to prevent sanitary sewer overflows, but they happen, grease and roots and other problems with the sanitary sewers. So we do public notifications now with drinking water problems, whether it's an emergency or we find a contaminant or something like that, you'd see one in our annual consumer confidence report. And it's just, those regulations are starting to make their way to the wastewater side of things. So we just want to make sure we're doing everything we need to comply.
Sounds important. Counselor Peak or Counselor Denham, any questions? Counselor Peak?
what does NPDES stand for the minutes?
National Pollution Discharge Elimination System.
It's in the discussion under purpose, Tom, if you look at the appropriations request.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Great, thank you. That makes sense.
Okay, Connie, you have anything? Anybody else? Okay, I have a motion to recommend to the full council a $25,000 appropriation from enterprise retained earnings for the FY22 NPDES permit compliance.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the supplemental appropriation of $25,000 to comply with the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Councilor Peak.
Aye.
Councilor Denham.
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. Another enterprise retained earning request of $32,500. Structural evaluation of the wastewater treatment plant headworks building and evaluation of fire code compliance and the storage of sodium hypochlorite at the wastewater treatment plant. This also sounds kind of important and was a priority when we did our water resource management plan. Obviously, I'm in favor of doing anything with that wastewater treatment plant to keep it going. Anything you want to add to that, Greg?
No, this is just, you're going to see more of these appropriations in the coming years, just as we start to pick away at the priorities of the integrated water resource management plan. So the headworks building has steel supports for the roof, that it's a very caustic environment, I guess I'll call it, with the raw sewage that comes into the building. And we need to deal with, look at a different type of coating for the beams, or that's what they're going to help us determine the best way to treat them now and have them, really be there for years to come. So,
can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
How old is that plant? 100 years?
I'm sorry.
How old is the wastewater treatment plant?
Well, this portion of the plant was added in the early 1990s. The headworks building was.
Oh, so it's not that old.
portions of the plant that we still count on were built in the 1950s.
Okay. That's the part that I'm a little scared about, but,
Mhm.
okay, any questions? Tom or Connie, anything? You all set?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like this has been an ongoing conversation in different
And it
forms.
will be.
Yes.
Anything we can do to keep going? Because the cost of replacing these things is millions of dollars. Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve a supplemental appropriation of $32,500 from enterprise retained earnings for professional service for the headwork structural evaluation. That's the word I was looking for.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. Counselor Peak?
Aye.
Counselor Riss says aye. Counselor Denham?
Aye.
Thank you. Another enterprise retained earnings request $58,000 for the pump station improvements. This is another wastewater treatment. The Lovefield Street wastewater pumping station needs to be improved. You want to go into that a little bit, Greg?
Sure. So again, it's the IWRMP, a recommendation of it. And as we look to make larger improvements on, we have a couple very big pump stations in town, Lovefield Street being one of them, one of the more essential stations. It takes a large amount of the city's wastewater and pumps it from the area of the intersection of Lovefield and O'Neill Streets up to the trunk line to take it down to the plant itself. So the station is crucial to our system, and for it to undergo a major rehab or renovation, we need to be able to bypass it. So part of the design that they're going to put together for us will give us a way to bypass pump around that station. We'd have to put a pump in between. I don't want to get into too much detail, but it'll give us the physical ability to pump around it so that the station can be taken offline for several months and fully rehabilitated. It's 50 years old now, so it's time to start planning for the larger scale rehabs. And there's also a repair we need to make. Oh, go ahead.
It's obviously necessary. Counselor Peak, Counselor Denham, do you agree it's necessary?
Yeah, we probably should have this.
Yeah. Well, another thing to remember here is this is design. We'll be back looking for funding for construction if we can. Hopefully we'll do what we can to find grant funding or another source. But we may, this is going to just help us get numbers and a very good idea what we have.
You can't apply for grants unless you know how much it's going to cost and what the design is. And this is the way it goes with almost every project that comes before us, whether it's CPA or this kind of thing.
Yep.
Planning it. We need the design done. Any further discussion from anybody? Hearing none, I will ask for a supplemental, a motion to approve a supplemental appropriation of $58,000 to be sent to the full council from enterprise retained earnings for the FY22 pump station improvement.
So moved.
Cool. Second.
Any further discussion? Counselor Denham?
Aye.
Counselor Peak?
Aye.
Counselor Riss says aye. Okay, the next one is, this is different. This isn't the wastewater treatment plant. This is for a new dump truck. 108,000. How old is this dump truck? 2008?
Yeah, the one that this will help move off of being a frontline truck is a 2008. It's approaching 100,000 miles. And they get beat up pretty good with the snow and, hauling blacktop and patching roads every year. So we're kind of, I need to get this moving as we're looking at over a year before another truck can be delivered. So
it takes a year from the point you get the money to get it. Holy
a year
cow.
for the truck, and then they're warning us an additional 6 months for the plow. So we could be looking at
supply chain problems.
Yes.
Oh,
looking at
God.
That's
So you're
what
going to
they're
go through another snow year before you get this truck.
exactly, if not maybe 2. So
Wow. Okay. These are not in stock. I mean, they have to build them.
yeah, and there's multiple issues. There's been heard of problems with getting the steel to make the snow plows, microchips for the trucks, all sorts of things. So.
Okay. Anybody, Tom or Connie?
Yeah, that one's.
Guess since
that
we
makes
have to
sense.
wait 2 years, we ought to get this going.
Right, and just hope that.
I mean, it
that
could be
nothing
here
happens.
sooner, but that's what we deal with. We order them through Marcotte Ford in Holyoke on a contract they have.
I remember the state contracts or the state program that gave us
Yeah,
deals. Is that's the same thing we're doing
Yep,
still?
it's a Greater Boston Police Council is a contract group we're able to buy through, and as local as possible to keep it is Marcotte Ford in Holyoke, and they're saying 18 months, so
All right.
they won't promise anything sooner than that. So.
Anything, counselors? Anybody else? Anybody? Okay. Then I'll ask for a motion to send to the full council a supplemental appropriation of $108,188 from free cash for the FY22 F550 dump truck.
So moved.
Second.
So Hadel or Jen, after this is done, can you give me what free cash is balance might be? I'll let you work on that as we move forward. Okay, just somebody's going to ask. This is enterprise retained earnings, $120,000. This is wastewater treatment plant, the low head and Pines pump removal. You want to go into this a little bit?
Yep, Dan, that one's actually the water department on Hendrick Street.
Mm-hmm.
The low head pumps there.
Oh, I said wastewater treatment. You meant water.
No,
water
this is the
treatment.
water
I
side,
apologize.
So those pumps were installed in 1996 when the plant was built, and they've worked well for us since then. The time's come for them to be removed and gone through one by one, so that we don't have a larger the larger component of the water system offline for too long. We can take one pump out at a time, rehab it, put it back, and then do the next one. And
We just did one of these, right, Lee, in the fall or something, I think.
We did the Nonotuck well last year. Maybe remembering that.
Yeah, that's what I'm remembering.
Yeah. That functions a little differently because the Nonotuck well is like our workhorse for the water system. We pull 60-70% of the city's water with that well and from that well source. And with the pump down there, we can't use that source at all. So we have to go to the Hendrick Street station, or we have to count on the Hendrick Street station or the Brook Street well. But in this repair that we're doing, we'll pull one pump at a time. We'll still have full use of the Hendrick Street facility, and just kind of work through whatever they need as they come out. It's just more proactive maintenance, really.
Okay, any other questions, Tom or Connie? Water pump needs to be repaired.
Yeah, another thing we're fixing with that appropriation is some communication equipment that functions between the main building on Hendrick Street and the low head pump station and the Pines well and the other components of the system to transmit tank levels back and forth, so that some of our equipment's just getting so obsolete when it does have minor failures, we can't fix it. So some of the communication.
And this will give you communication to get out there right away and see what's going on.
Yeah, it'll help us upgrade some of that stuff so that we can continue operating, to keep all of our automation working the way we need it to.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, then I'll take a motion, please, to send to the full council a supplemental appropriation of $120,000 from enterprise retained earnings for the FY22 low head and Pines pump removal account.
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Councilor Denham.
Aye.
Councilor Peak.
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. Last one is for combo truck storage, $150,000. This is for the sewer division garage. Extend the life of sewer division vacuum flush combination truck. This is what you use, I guess, to clean out all the sewers. I think I saw one of those out there recently. It's a big vacuum. It goes in, gets all the leaves and everything out.
Yep, you'll see it out a lot. One of the things we need to do to comply with our MS4 permit is clean for almost every catch basin in town at least once a year. So
that prevents flooding if we don't clean them. Yeah.
Yep.
And this will keep this garage extension, I guess it is. will give it more life because it's not out in the weather.
Yeah, so right now, during the cold months, we store that truck at the water department. It just barely fits in the building. It's not a great method for us to the staff that needs to use the truck is on one side of town. They have to come get it. It's just the only bay we have large enough to store it with heat is at the water department. And it's not a great way of operating. And then in the warmer months, it's outside at the wastewater treatment plant and susceptible to, UV damage from the sun. And adding on to the garage bay we have allows us to, we can do it without having to adding on instead of building another building. We're able to use the 2-inch water connection we have there and the existing for heat in that 4-bay garage at the sewer department. And it will really, having the truck indoors most of the time, stored indoors all the time, will really prolong the life of a vehicle. It's remarkable when you look at a vehicle that's been parked outside for 10 years and one that hasn't. So especially with this, there's a lot of rubber components and gaskets on it, and it's a pretty intricate piece of machinery. So.
And you don't want freeze and thaw cycles going on with that stuff.
It was I believe it was a $335,000 purchase back in FY 2017. And I'd like to see that. I'd like to see us get 20 years out of that truck, if not 25. So.
Okay. That's a pretty big, that's excellent. Plus it frees up the garage at the water treatment plant for something else.
Well, yeah, we can get our vehicles back where they've normally been stored. So.
Okay. Any questions, councilors? Seems straightforward. Then I'll take a motion to approve a supplemental appropriation of $150,000 for enterprise retained earnings for the FY22 combo truck storage garage.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion. Councilor Denham.
Aye.
Councilor Peak.
Aye.
Councilor Riss says aye. I believe that concludes. Next meeting, I'm going to announce that we'll talk about the council salaries. Hadel, where are we with free cash and enterprise retained earnings after these are done? If you don't have the figures, you could just email us.
I do have the figures, but I can email these two.
I would do both. Can you tell us where we are then once these are done?
Yeah. So after this appropriation goes through, free cash would be at 1,4,060,551.44. Retained earnings will be at 1.9 million, 1,852 even. And I think we have one appropriation out of reserve too. We'll be at $188,999 in reserve.
So we're still pretty good on all those accounts.
Yes.
Even with all of these requests coming forward. I'm sure there'll be more. Councilors, do we have anything else to discuss this evening? We don't have a meeting next week. We have 2 weeks between council meetings. Apparently, and I don't know, Councilor Gomez, President Gomez, do you want to discuss this at all? The next meeting is in person in April. In conference room 1. We got that email today. Omar, where are we with that? Because it's not what you said at the last meeting.
Well, about the full council?
No. We got stuff from Barbara today that the mayor is discussing that we meet in person hybrid in the conference rooms starting in April.
The conversation that we have as a council, we make the decision. The full council is going back in April, and the committees will back to 50 pages on May.
Okay.
That's what the decision that we made at the last.
I know, and I thought Barbara just has what's being going on in the city hall, so maybe because she's already booked conference room 1 for our next 2 meetings. So I think maybe have a conversation with her, President Gomez, because I don't know what's going on. We're just confused. So we'll find out what's going on, councilors, whether we're in person or not. I don't think
It'll be on the
are.
13th.
Huh?
But that'll be on the 13th either way.
Yes, if we have a meeting, there'll be a meeting on the 13th, whether it's Zoom or whether it's hybrid in person. President Gomez is going to straighten that out. Okay. Anything else? All right. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion to adjourn, Counselor Denham,
Aye.
Counselor Peak,
Hi.
Mr. Rich says aye. It'll be so nice when we get out of this whole thing that we can say aye, and be done with it.
Mhm.
All
Voice
right,
votes
thank you,
are great.
everybody. See you.
All right.
Have a
Thank you,
good
everyone.
evening.
Have a good night.
Have a
All
good
right.
evening, everyone. Thank you.
Night.
Good night.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.